two niggas spoiling movies. Yeah. Brandon Collins, that's me, and Justin Brown for your movie needs. Medium popcorn. Woo! You haven't seen it, well, we're gonna spoil it. Spoil it in your face. That's your warning. So if you get pissed, it's all your fault. Woo-hoo. Woo-hoo.
What is up, little biscuits and sun-dried tomatoes? It's your boy Eddie Collins, and I'm here with a very, very special guest, and also going to soon be joined by my co-host. But before that, we have acclaimed director Tom George joining us, who just recently directed See How They Run, starring Sam Rockwell, Adrian Brody, Ruth Wilson, and Saoirse Ronan. How are you, sir?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. Justin's rocked up literally at the end of the intro. It was perfect.
Yeah.
I'm very happy to be here. Thanks for having me, guys.
Absolutely. We're excited to have you, man. And how are things over in London right now?
Things are good. It's the afternoon, so I appreciate you guys coming on a little earlier than might be your usual slot. So that's no, it's good. Like I've been working in on sort of development and writing the last few months since that movie came out, and that's been a lovely like sort of break after working on that film for a couple of years. Yeah, so no, all good, and just like pleased to be here with you guys, and knowing in my mind that this will be coming off the back of the most like iconic theme song in podcasting. That's exciting, you know.
We appreciate that, Tom. We love that theme song and hope that Phil Collins never hears about us.
He's gonna come after us one day.
He will. Once we finally hit it, that's when Phil Collins is gonna come and call in for some royalties. But until then, Tom, I gotta ask. I mean, what was it like directing a stacked cast like this for See How They Run? I mean, you got Oscar nominees, you got 2 Oscar winners in this cast. I mean, and this is your feature debut, correct? So.
Yeah, that's right. Like? Yeah, it was crazy. I mean, to be honest, I had to like try not to think about it like most of the time, you know, because if you thought about it too much, it'd just be sort of paralyzing. I'd gone from like making basically a show with my friends that was on the BBC over here that started out as like a kind of tiny thing that even the BBC didn't really know was getting made, and then kind of grew into like something of a kind of cult hit here. To then, yeah, as you say, making this film with this amazing cast, you know, Saoirse and Sam at the heart of it, and then Adrian Brody, David Oyelowo, Ruth Wilson. People just kept saying yes when we asked them to do it. So it was a really, I think it's like probably not a usual like casting process, but yeah, really like once we had Saoirse come on board and then Sam quite soon afterwards. Suddenly that kind of like, I think, changed the feel of the film. And also it was really useful, not just from them being, you know, such big stars and such brilliant actors. Obviously people are excited about that. Yep. But also this was like a film that was kind of hard to necessarily get the tone on the page when you first read it, basically. And once those guys were on board, it kind of unlocked it, I think, for other people reading the script. They're like, okay, I can imagine Sam doing this or Saoirse doing this. And I think that just like really helped get across what it was we were trying to do, which is like, for those who haven't seen the movie, it's like a murder mystery in the kind of classic sense, but it's also a film that's like about murder mysteries at the same time. So it's playing with the tropes and the genre. And there's probably a version of the film like that I could see when I first read it, where everything kind of was turned up to like 11, and frankly, that was a film I didn't want to see. And so once you had Saoirse and Sam on board, it kind of gave you a clue, okay, what they're talking about is like rooting it in like, although it's this heightened world, the performances are going to be sort of nuanced and rooted and detailed. And so that was kind of a key part to kind of making sense of it, I think, for people. Yeah. But yeah, just, you know, amazing. And as I say, genuinely tried to like not think about it. I tried to come to work like it was a normal day of work. That was the important, like, you know, even though it was a classic duck's feet, like under the surface of the water, like very much anxiety racing. But yeah, just trying to like, you know, not get caught up in the fact that they're these big stars, which was, you know, easier said than done because, you know, a lot of my like, you know, just people I loved, having seen them, you know, throughout their careers, but getting to mix them in with a bunch of my sort of, I suppose, like comic acting heroes from here in the UK, that was really like special, and seeing them come together into an ensemble that kind of hopefully feels like it's all pulling in the same direction, even though you've got these quite different kind of different backgrounds to the sort of to the cast members.
Absolutely, folks. Please see how they run. It's on Disney Plus. Tom did a great job putting that together. I had a lot of fun watching it. But I watched it back when you and I first did Doug Loves Movies. So
yeah, that's right. That's when we first met, wasn't it? Sorry, I'm just clattering around like
no worries.
It's like ting clang kung. It's like making homemade music here. Sorry about that. Yeah, we met on doing Doug Loves Movies. It was my first time on that show, and yeah, I was very anxious going on. I enjoyed it. You know, I enjoyed it. It's hard because you're going on with like comedians, and it's like. Yeah, but again, like he just creates such a great atmosphere on that show, and it's just like hanging out with mates, isn't it?
Absolutely, and but I think you joined during like the middle of like my winning streak on that show, and so it was kind of like Doug was like, "Oh, you're going against Brandon, you're gonna probably lose," and then I think you did lose, and you were very like, but you were very humble about it. You're like, "Oh well, you know, it's gonna happen."
Yeah, that's the way you got to be. If you're gonna lose, you got to be humble about it. I don't know if he likes an arrogant loser.
See,
I mean, we all love Michael Jordan, though. You know, that's the guy you never want to even say anything to because he's going to come after you for losing.
Yeah, Mike is so bitter. They made a documentary about him, but he was airing his grievances.
And he still somehow won. He still came out on top.
Yep. But you know who didn't come out on top was Brendan Fry, the star of Brick. He got tangled into some stuff and got taken down a peg or two, even though he did solve the crime and the mystery.
It's a segue. It's a good segue, Brandon.
That's what I do. I say
solid.
insane things on the show, but I'm good with segues. But it's so interesting though, because we haven't done Brick, and I remember Brick being a huge film for me, and I'm sure for you, Tom, doing like, you know, being into the murder mysteries and stuff like that. I mean, a lot of people are like, "Oh, Rian Johnson, he went from Star Wars and Looper to you know, a lot Knives Out." It's like he started with Brick. This is his feature debut. This like kind of murder mystery thing that started off like really small, like Sundance, everything, starring Joseph Gordon-Levitt. So Tom, why did you pick Brick, and what does this movie mean to you?
Well, I loved this movie when it first came out. But I realized I had probably watched it in 10 or 15 years. Like it would be that long. Like, and I suppose it came out at a time when I was just starting to think of like filmmaking as something that I might be able to do. Like I didn't go to film school or any of that, but and I was, I suppose, a little bit younger than Ryan, so I was more in the sort of YouTube sort of world where I was first starting out. But it was coming out at that time where you know, I don't know, I suppose I was really interested in films that were done on what seemed like a kind of micro budget, right? First features done in a way that, and this falls into that category. And I suppose other films were like Pi by Darren Aronofsky, Following by Christopher Nolan, like films like from what have gone on to be these like, you know, incredible filmmakers. And like so often their first features were done on a kind of micro sort of shoestring budget. And, you know, above all, it's like a great story. It's really like good storytelling, super economic, Brick is. But also I love the swing it's taken with tone. You know, it's like, this is a real risk. Like, I think this film, the whole idea behind this film is kind of like, it could easily be a car crash, I think. And so it has to be like handled just right and make sure that everyone's like pulling in the same direction, that everyone gets what they're trying to do. And I think particularly for a first feature, that's really, really bold. And also I love like looking back at this as Ryan's first feature, you can still see so many of the things that will like become kind of intrinsic to his style. I think you know, you got the like smart, intricate plotting, The kind of economy to the shooting style, like the visual style of it is economic, but always like pulls you in. It's kind of like it's smartly done. There's always something to like engage you in the visual style. And above all, a kind of love of language. Like I think he like loves words and like the musicality and rhythms of like dialogue. And I think you kind of see that throughout all his projects. So it was interesting like to go back to it and see that all of that is in Brick for sure.
Definitely. I mean, it had a budget of based on UVS research, $450,000. It ended up grossing $3.9 million. I did see this when it first came out in theaters because I was in college in New York, and I was by the Angelica, which is on Houston Street, and that's where all the independent small films would be released. And Justin's kind of smirking because, Tom, I have to. Okay, so I gotta tell you something. I love this movie so much, and I was so influenced by the idea of high schoolers talking like this that in college I had a screenwriting class, and I wrote like my own parody of this film that I called it Shuffle, and it was like with even younger kids. I think they were 10 years old, Justin?
Mm-hmm.
They were 10 years old. It was about this kid trying to find out what his ex-girlfriend did to his iPod Shuffle. And it is one of the most problematic, insane short film scripts.
And Tom, it's horrible. It's horrible.
It's not terrible. It can't be terrible.
No, it's not terrible. It's horrible.
I mean, it's unhinged for sure. It's definitely so I was heavily influenced by this at one point in my life. And like you said, Tom, you take some big swings with this toad, and I did, and they were all misses. They were all
So it's funny because when we were watching this film, all I could see was Shuffle all the way through. Now, I did not know that this is the film that influenced Shuffle, but as I was watching it, I was just like, oh my God, this is like watching Shuffle. And now I understand why. And now I know why I was just like, why does this have Brandon written all over it? So like, I feel like I now have to watch this without the Brandon lens on it because you should have told me that. So then so it's not being corroded by you.
I want to hear, and I'm sure that your audience want to hear more about Shuffle. Before we get on to Brit, like, can you just like kick us off with the synopsis? Like, what were we talking about?
That's the thing. We recorded the live read. It's available on the paywall on patreon.com/media popcorn, folks. It's a twisty turn. It's a twisty road. This young kid just trying to figure out what happened to his iPod Shuffle, as well as his ex-girlfriend, and
people getting poked in the booty holes. Weird stuff like that.
It's an interrogation tactic. It's I was 20. I listened to a lot of Cameron the Diplomats. It was and Lil Wayne. It was a weird script. It was a very weird script. But hey, Rian Johnson wrote the original screenplay for this in 1997, right out of film school. Okay, it took him years to get the funding for the project. So you gotta believe. That's what I'm trying to say.
Baby steps, huh? That's what you're saying. Baby steps.
Yeah, because what did it take? I was a sophomore. No, I was a junior in college, and so that would be like 2007-ish, and it's 2023. I was an official writer for Universal until the writer's strike. So I've come a long way, guys. That's all I'm trying.
I feel like we're just gonna bypass all of that. No, Brandon, you have come a long way. You definitely have, because Tom, one of these days you'll have to be subjected to Shuffle, and you'll understand what the rest of us were dealing with when we did that live reading, because it was a time, to say the least.
The worst decision I made, Tom, besides writing Shuffle, especially like not even like giving it a once over, I hadn't read it since college. So like I'm like watching it, I'm reading it with fresh eyes with the comedians I booked, and these are my comedy friends. And so they're immediately like, oh no. They're like, Brandon, what did you get us into? I'm like, hey, I'm paying you guys, but yes, this is insane.
We're like, not enough. No,
not enough.
We're literally like, you're reading and then you're seeing what's coming up and you're just like, wait, what? Wait, I have to say that? Yeah,
definitely like reading ahead, trying to see what's coming down the track, like laying the track as you go.
Yeah,
I can't wait to get into that.
Oh,
Yeah,
jeez.
it's interesting to say the least. But I also feel like this film was like a part of like a time frame where it was like, high schoolers and they were speaking, and like acting like full on adults and like beyond their years. So like this was a thing at that time. I don't know, like me, it always kind of bothered me when with these kinds of films, because I'm just like, no high school actually talks like that. But even so, like for this one, is like you have high school drug dealers,
Yep.
which I've known some drug dealers in my day in high school, and no one acted like this. No one walked around in a cape looking like Count Dracula with the cane. Like that was so crazy.
Well,
me.
he had the leg. He had the
No,
little...
I know. I get that. And that's why he has a cane. But
Yeah,
why
it
is
doesn't
he
explain
wearing
the
a cape?
Yeah, I hear what you're saying.
Because
Like,
he's the
are you
pen.
doing magic? When's the magic show starting?
What I would say is I think that I totally agree with you, Justin. Like that is a thing, particularly like American high school movies, and the cut. They're often like in that period. It's clearly like 29-year-olds playing the teenagers, and they're all speaking in a sort of like adults. I'd say like what works for me with Brick, where some of those others don't, is like it is aware of that, and it's almost pushed that to an absurdist level, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of pushed that to its limit, so it feels deliberate. They're not expecting you to go, oh, there's something up here. What is like they're sort of they're being kind of upfront with that. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, that's definitely a thing in films from that period. I almost feel like it's like leaning into that in a way. Do you know what I mean? Like kind of like
it's like I felt like what's call it, Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character was almost like the Josh Hartnett for this film. He was very Josh Hartnett, in that time frame of like what he was doing with a lot of the roles that he was given.
I mean, I think he's had better filmography, if you ask me. I mean, for me, I think it was that Brendan's like that reluctant. It's like what is it, Road Runner? Like no, not Blade Runner. Like characters like that are reluctantly pulled into this crazy situation and just kind of like dealing with it. I also love the dialogue. I think I bought it immediately when he goes to the brain. And Brain's like, how goes it, Brendan? He's like, status quo, like, things like that where you're like, oh, this is going to be a whole different thing. And then like he had that scene with Richard Roundtree, so they got Shaft to be the principal, and like revealed that Brendan had ratted out to him before. He's like, you got to give me something to to bite on. I just really bought into it, but I also read like a lot of Agatha Christie stuff. Justin, you and I have often talked about like 1930s gangster movies and how
the
they used
noirs,
to speak.
the noirs.
Yeah, the noir. So it's like
this, like a noir meets Encyclopedia Brown.
Yeah, in a way, kind of. Yeah.
I mean, it's like I got the DVD right here for
okay,
for which is for a non-visual medium.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is like Brick, a detective movie. That's what it says, right? And so right from the which sounds like okay. But I think what that's doing is like it's telling you it's working within a specific genre, right? And that becomes apparent from the get-go. And you either get on board with that, like Brandon, or you do not get on board with that, like Justin. And that's fine. Films don't have to be for everyone. But yeah, it's like definitely playing into, I think like Rian Johnson said, that he started kind of with the Coens and that led him to like detective fiction of the kind of 30s and 40s, like Hammett and Raymond Chandler. And I think the film for me, like visually and just stylistically, that I was really reminded of watching it again and I think is clearly a big influence is Chinatown. Like that seems to be the film that it's kind of like take Chinatown and apply it to American high school, right? So you get this detective movie, but in the context of an American high school. And then the question is, how do you handle that? Because there's a spoof version of that, right? Isn't there? There's an out-and-out comic version of that, which in a way is less risky because I think it's such a familiar genre, like the murder mystery is. It's a familiar genre. It's open to like to playing with it and to playing with people's expectations and to finding comedy in the sort of tropes of that genre. But what they do here is they play it completely straight. You know,
Yes.
they never wink at you. And although there is funny stuff in it, and you've touched on some of it already, Rand, and we should definitely talk about that, it never feels like it breaks that world. It feels like the kind of tone and humor that you get in this kind of detective fiction as well, right? It's like fast quipping stuff with the police chief or whatever that might be. It's like it really, like, you know, sticks to that tone. It plays it completely straight, and I kind of think that's why it's like bold to do that.
I think the only, like, and I completely agree with you, Tom. I think the only issue personally I had were that some of the performances either didn't quite fit with exactly. It felt like sometimes there was characters that were in different movies, right? Like I think about Brian White as Brad Bramson, like the jock that like is involved in this like drug game, and like he's just so over the top and like screwed about the coach won't put me in, which actually reminded me a lot of Napoleon Dynamite and how the uncle kept saying like we would have won state if the coach had just put me in. And then the guy that played Tug, Noah Fless, he was. It was a little bit rough. It was a bit, because I know he's supposed to be an enforcer, but like just his physicality and stuff, it just felt like, you know, it's something where it's tough, because as a director, I imagine you'd be like, hey, like, let's try to make this a little bit more natural. Like, because it seems like you're forcing being a tough guy versus just being the tough guy.
That's interesting. Yeah. I totally agree with that, Brandon. Like I and having heard like Rian Johnson and Joseph Gordon-Levitt talk a little bit about it, like I think they initially wanted to come at it like with an idea of total naturalism. It would all be played like really naturally, and then they realized the way the language itself needed to be drilled in a certain way, right? It had to be like performed. The rhythms of it were important. It had to be performed like really at pace, and in a way that kind of style of film is like really kind of really drilled, like in a dialogue sense. You know, everyone's coming back at each other quickly. And what's interesting is, you know, then you're trying to do a thing where it's like kind of stylized naturalism, right? On the one hand, I think you've got, you know, a performance style, like I say, where the script dictates that you do it in a not very natural way, but then you're looking for the actors to still bring a sort of naturalism to that performance, even within that framework. And Joseph Gordon-Levitt, does that. And he pulls that off because he does enough to like work within what the genre requires, but you always also feel like it's a contemporary performance underneath it. Do you know what I mean? It's like there's detail to it. You believe he's going through stuff. And I think that's a really tricky thing for like young and quite inexperienced actors in particular to get right. I would agree that like, you know, that some people get it more right than others, for sure.
It's interesting you say that, because Joseph Gordon-Levitt, he's a child actor, right? He's been acting since Angels in the Outfield and Third Rock from the Sun. So he had been out here working. I know Nora Zetter, who played the femme fatale, so to speak. She had been in a few like I think WB shows here and there. And of course, we got Richard Roundtree. Matt O'Leary, he looked somewhat familiar, but Lucas Haas, I remember he was like a big child actor, kind of took a break for a while, you know, being part of that.
Good.
Yeah, Megan Good. That's right. Yes. You know, Justin and I are big fans. Even though
my cousin Skeeter.
She wasn't my cousin Skeeter. That's right. That's why do you keep bringing that show up? Like that was such a disturbing show.
Great. That show was great when I was
a kid. Walked around high school with a Muppet. That actually would have been kind of fun. But like again, going into the comedy realm, Tommy, you were talking about. But it would have been hilarious just to see one Muppet pop up, like a Muppet. You know, the Muppet.
Actually, it would have been hilarious if it was like half like, you know, human people and the other half were Muppets that were all a part of this movie. That would have been insane.
What was that show? I feel like there was a YouTube like series, maybe going back early days of YouTube, 10 or 15 years ago, where it was like Muppet style characters in a kind of noirish detective universe. Does that ring any bells for you? That it was like, and I'm sure basically what I'm saying is, I think your dream can come true, Justin. I think it's already on YouTube.
But I also think it's like, and because you have the Muppets, you can have those Muppets doing like the most flagrant things, which makes it even crazier.
They did try that with the Happy Timers that came out about like 5 years ago with Melissa McCarthy.
Yeah.
But it didn't quite work.
Yeah. And I'm sure that was jumping off. I don't know whether it was the same people, but there was this much more like rough and ready, homemade, lo-fi thing in exactly that same style.
Yeah.
Of like a mix of like human detectives and Muppet detectives, grisly sort of murder cases, but it's Muppets. Like I suppose it's that Avenue Q thing taken to like detective fiction.
It's kind of like a Who Framed Roger Rabbit kind of take on it, if you really think about it.
Yeah, I think this does play it straight. Like it could have easily gone the comedic realm, just like similar to Knives Out, like but probably a little bit sillier just because it is younger. But I do like that Ryan played it straight. I think because at the time it came out, he was able to play it straight and do this because remember, this is a time in the early 2000s when people were really sensitive, especially after Columbine, about teenagers killing teenagers. I mean, this changed like a lot of films and like the way that they were made. So I think he got very, like he was fortunate enough to be able to do this independently. So he didn't have like the influences of other things to try to make him change the tone and approach to the film and the characters. Even though Brendan, like when he gets attacked by that dude that Brad Bramish pays to, get back at him.
Oh, the guy with the knife. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, where's security? Like, this is like a suburb. Like, and there's no drug dealers in the area.
There's basically no teachers around in this whole school. It's like the only
Charlie
person
Brown.
we see. Yeah, we see like the vice principal, but it's like basically like, the kids are running wild. It's like a feral playground.
In this film, if you think about it, we've only saw 2 adults, Richard Roundtree and the mom who just keeps on pouring these kids milk.
Yeah, yeah, the Pin's mom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, was it milk or lemonade?
I'm not. Well,
he's mixing it up. There's times where they get served OJ, I think, and then there's. I seem to remember. I think Tug likes milk. Like she's serving Tug.
That's right.
Milk,
Yeah. Oh yeah, and then what does the brain say is like Tug? That's like could be like milk and vodka, and I was just like, what has he been doing?
Yeah, that sounds like the worst possible.
That sounds like a white Russian, but okay.
But then like you have at the end when you have everyone at, I think it was at Tug's place. No, I'm sorry, the Penn's place.
Yep.
And she's there and she's pouring milk for these kids. I'm just like, wait, what is happening right now? Actually, there's another thing that I found funny, and I know it was just, it is what it is. But like when Brendan he goes when Tug when him and Tug have that conversation about like, hey, this is what I think is going on. The Penn is not being truthful with everything. The Tug has him off of his feet, choking him up against the wall. First of all, he's not strong enough to do that. I can tell that kid's not strong enough. But beyond that, and Brendan's talking to him as he's being choked in the air, and he doesn't have a foot on solid ground. And I'm just like, you can't choke. You can't talk right now. You're choking.
You never
How
had
are
to
you
do
having
that?
this conversation?
You never had to do that, Justin, where someone lifts you up and you trying to plead for them to put you down?
No, Brendan, because you can't talk under those situations.
I could do it. I'm trying to get down.
Like that full-on conversation. I don't think that he's actually done. I'm just like, that's not how it works.
Yeah.
That's not how the human body works, my friend.
I think given like Rian Johnson's influence of like the Coen brothers and stuff, that mother scene, Justin, you're talking about, I think that's probably paying homage to Goodfellas. You know how like Scorsese he put his mom in it? And they just murdered Billy Batts, and she's like, "Y'all want some food?" And they're trying to bury it. I think that's kind of what it was supposed to be. But I mean, it wasn't saying that like there's that huge battle at that little house on the hill. Like that's gonna
also really get like David Lynch vibes from the Pin stuff, and it's partly like the design. Like he's in like the Pin cellar is this like minimalist kind of like wood paneled space with like table lamps or whatever. It's like obviously it's like deliberately not what you expect from either a high school student or a drug dealer, right?
Yeah.
And he rides around in a van, right?
He rides around in a van, and in the back he gets driven around in a van, and inside the back of the van is a table lamp or a lampstand, right?
Yeah, like in the back. What's happening here?
He's transferable.
His legs crossed. Just
he likes ambient light. He wants it wherever he goes. He's got to have uplighting.
I just need to know where that lamp is plugged in the van. That's what I was.
Oh, that's easy. There's always outlets and stuff like that. I imagine, like the machines like that.
This is 2005, my friend.
This is pre-USB connectors. Yeah.
Maybe he had a generator. I don't know, or they plugged it into the cigarette light.
That's got to be it. That was the only way to charge anything before about
exactly.
2005. So it's got to be
Actually,
that.
you know what? I'm gonna have to take that back because I had a Lincoln Aviator, a 2004 Lincoln Aviator, and in the back they had the outlet. I think that was the beginning of that. But at the same time, what this kid was driving was a van. So this is, and it wasn't like it was like a work van. It wasn't like one of those.
This is the biggest climb down. This is the biggest reversal I've ever seen. Like 30 seconds ago, you were like, "This broke the film for me." There was no logic to the lack of outlets in the back, and you're like, "Actually, I had a car with an outlet in the back." So,
yeah. but then again, this kid they were riding in a work van. They were riding in like a plumber's van, so they would not have that.
Well, to be fair, he was doing work. That's how he picked up Brendan.
Right.
Which is hilarious.
Expense.
When he finds out about the pen, and what does Brain say? He's like, he's old. He's like 26.
Yeah, there's definitely these moments where it like skirts close to the absurdity. Like it goes kind of full absurd, right? And I think the vice principal scene is like another one, right? There's a line where he says, Brandon says to him something like, "No more of these informal chats. If you've got a discipline issue with me, write me up or suspend me, and I'll see you at parent conference." Right? And it's kind of all of that is what the PI would say to the police chief until it gets to the teacher conference bit. And like those moments where it like clearly tells you it's having fun with that, right? And that is a risk, and it's like, and I totally see that some of the audience, like, that might be the point you lose them. But I think for me, it's like, it's just self-aware enough to like keep it interesting and give me like, and for me to find it amusing, I suppose, without ever totally breaking that sort of like the conceit.
Yeah, I think in regards to like the murder mystery of it all, I think that's I think I was overthinking it when I first saw this movie and being like, oh, there's got to be all these twists and turns. And it's actually pretty straightforward what happened, like with the ex-girlfriend and how she was kind of like hooking up with Dode and then Tug, and like, she got involved with the wrong people, particularly what's her name? The femme fatale, Laura, and her scheme and everything. And like, Brendan breaks it all down at the end. He's like, you were behind all of this. And he knew from pretty much moment one not to trust her, even before he saw the cigarette that was from when he first had the phone call on the payphone with Emily. Right. So it's like, he always knew, like, I gotta keep her at arm's length. And then once he saw the cigarette after that, he had that moment of weakness, and, they had a little kissy kiss on the bed, which I was like, all right, sure. I mean, isn't this guy I was just like, isn't Brendan coughing up blood? Like, didn't he get beat up so much? Like, he's practically dying and no one will help this kid. He's on his parents' insurance.
Yeah, he has wounds on his mouth. Yeah, that ain't it.
It is not a time. But you're right. It's like, it's laid out from the start, right? Like, because one of the things I like about it is like, you're straight into the story, right? It starts fast. You come in, Brendan's found the body already, right? You're straight in. And then you have that phone call and we get a riddle. Well, it's basically a riddle because he gets this garbled message from Emily on the phone booth in the scene that you're talking about, Brandon. And she says, I did what she said with the brick. I didn't know it was bad, but the pin's on it now for poor Frisco and they're playing it all on me. And that's kind of like the whole movie in this one garbled line, but she's hysterical and it's down the end of a phone, and Brandon doesn't understand what it is. That's where it starts, right? He takes that kind of riddle to the brain and they start to unpick it and figure out what the different meaning of those terms might be. Are they slang? Are they people? Whatever. But yeah, I quite like that about it, that it's like, it's kind of all there for you at the start. And by the time you come full circle, all of that's been like unpacked, I suppose. But it definitely like throws you straight into the story from the get-go, which particularly in the first feature where then you can sometimes find that they're not necessarily the most like tightly honed sort of stories. Like you can tell that Rian Johnson's like just got great story instincts, like from the top. It's like throw them in, chuck a riddle at them, and then let's go. And I enjoy that side of it for sure.
You know,
Yeah.
I think you made a really good point about the way he kind of just went into it, because I feel like a lot of first time directors are a little too exposition-y. They feel like they need to build this whole world and yada yada yada, and they spend too much time doing that. And then next thing you know, you have a 2-hour movie, which obviously is, and you're going to hit the cutting room floor, and that then it's going to be something completely different. But I think it was pretty good that they just they just immediately jumped right in. That actually definitely did help.
Yeah, I mean, it's also funny though, because like everything falls apart for this drug empire pretty quickly. I mean, Brendan doesn't have to do too much for the Pin and Tug's operation to fall apart. I mean, within 55 minutes, the operation's in disarray and they're at war. You know what I mean? Like Brendan, and I don't even think Brendan intentionally put it like that. He was obviously trying to create friction and figure out what happened to Emily and what her role was in all this, but it immediately fell apart where I was like, what is your end game, Laura? What is your end game, Tug? Like, because Tug is the one killing everybody. And it's like, well, yeah, it's obvious because he's the one like quickly to pull his gun and start.
So you feel like this business is going to fall apart anyway. Like it's kind of like the pandemic. The pandemic was like an accelerator for if a business was struggling, the pandemic probably sped it up. In this movie, the Pins operation was like it wasn't going to last long term anyway. Brendan just sort of sped things up. Yeah.
No, what it's like the Departed. It's like like Brendan doesn't have like much of a rep. So it's like why would he let him into his operation so easily? I mean, yes, Tug beat him up, but like within like a day or two, like the Pin sitting on the beach talking to Brendan about life and like being philosophical and shit. It's like, bro, you got bigger problems on your hands.
Well, I also think part of it is now are these I know you said somebody's 26, but like they're high school kids. Yeah. High school kids, and like if you're looking at Tug, obviously Tug is he's a little crazy. He's a little cray here.
Oh, you think?
Right? But also
he wears all white in a white beanie wherever they live. I don't know what's going on. They're in California, right? Yeah, they're in California.
With the weird scar on his face.
Was that a scar or hair? I couldn't tell.
I was trying to work that out for the whole second half of the movie. I was like, I couldn't work out if that was a strand of hair or a cut.
I think it was supposed to be a scar. At first, I thought it was like a blood trickling down his head, but I was like, wait a second, that's not blood. And I was looking closer. It's definitely a scar because it doesn't move at any point.
Mm.
So the thing is, obviously he's crazy, but he's crazy. He's overtly emotional because I think the one turn in this film was the fact that Emily was pregnant, and we had whose baby is it? Is it Tug's or is it what's the other kid's?
Dode.
Yeah,
who
Dode.
That actor has been in every Rian Johnson movie, by the way.
Is that right?
Yeah. That actor,
like an Adam Sandler film.
Yeah, Noah Segan. He was in Star Wars, Last Jedi. He was like a random stormtrooper. He was in Looper. I forgot the role he had in Looper, but Knives Out. He was initially the partner of Lakeith Stanfield in the first Knives Out, and the second one, Glass Onion. He's the dude that's just walking around the island, just getting hammered.
I love that.
Yeah. Like, so it's nice that he has like a friend that he just puts in everything.
I need to get a friend who's a director. So just put me give me a long career. Hey man, whatever you're doing, I'm doing too.
Yeah, it's like Michael Madsen and Quentin Tarantino, like
or just Adam Sandler and all of the people that he's put on over the years.
True.
So Tug, because so his killings are more emotional killings. And so like with the whole thing of Emily being pregnant and not knowing who it is, and so that killing wasn't necessarily about drugs. That was a personal thing. So and I think that was a good part because like people in this age range are typically very volatile. So now you're talking about something as serious as a child. No, for real. I mean, kids. high schoolers are a little bit more volatile. They, the emotions and things
Well,
like that.
yeah, it's very
they feel them
emotional.
a little harder. So like him actually, the way he lashes out, not saying that any high school kid would turn into Tug. I'm not saying that high school kids would turn into Tug, but I think this like, okay, so like he lost his shit and then he killed her. Is like, I could see, that's the kind of things I could see happening to also someone who's also dealing with the pressure of being an enforcer, for a drug kingpin who's also dressed like Count Dracula
and lives at home with his mom.
Yes.
That's what I'm saying. This operation was being held up by straws.
No, the movie's wild. The movie's wild.
And also, you don't hold things up by straws. I don't know what saying I was trying to go with, but yeah,
I get it though. It painted a picture.
Yeah, I was thinking
about.
I was thinking about Doe with the straw whistle.
I like that moment. There's these little moments, like that's a good visual gag as well, right? And it's sort of like, there's those sort of moments. I think you see those like little bits of flair. He turns up to like the dropout kids who are sort of like, I guess they're like the junkies in a sort of detective, sort of world in that universe. They're all kind of hanging out the back of the store and by the garbage cans, like, and as he approaches as a kid, doing that thing with a straw where he's making it like a slide whistle. Yeah. So it's making that really annoying noise, and then he just sort of grips it halfway through. Stay on that same shot. He takes it out, comes back, and he's tied a knot in it, puts it back in the kid's mouth. Yeah. Like there's little moments like that. I really love.
It did remind me of when I had a slide whistle growing up, and I remember like that had to be such a stupid purchase for my mom. Like, I want a slide whistle, and then you just.
Yeah, and there's no like, it's not like a proper instrument. No offense, not like a proper instrument where like.
Oh no, there's offense there.
What? And I said no offense. It was intended. But what I'm saying is, it's like, say the violin, for example, or the flute. Terrible instruments, like for to hear a beginner playing, right? But at least there's a sort of potential end goal there. There's no slide whistle in the orchestra, it's going nowhere. Its only purpose is to be incredibly annoying, and it will never get better than that.
So I also think that we need to give a shout out to the character Emily. Because Emily went from Brendan,
Brendan Fry.
Brendan.
Which actually, it's crazy because there's a New York comedian with that exact name. But anyway.
Yeah, I know.
That's so weird.
So she went from Brendan to a burnout, kind of crackhead. He seems like he's on the road to crackhead in Dode. And then a crazy man in Tug. Like, what was she doing?
She's playing the game, baby. She's playing the game.
Well, what the game.
It's interesting as well. It's thinking about like Brendan as well. Like, do you think Brendan's a good guy? I was thinking about that, like watching the film. It's like obviously he's there as a kind of avenging angel or whatever. That's sort of his character. But you think about it, like he's like the ultimate white knight, right? He's like, they broke up because he was overprotective. And now he's like trying to make up for all his own shit, basically, by going on this rampage. It's interesting to think about whether he is actually the hero of the film.
Well, he's also like, isn't he like a social pariah at this point? Because he did rat out, everyone kind of knows that he ratted out the one dude who was like, dealing Emily to drugs and stuff. So it's kind of like, he's isolated, like he doesn't have, and that's a tough place to be also as a high schooler. Where you're like isolated, you're talking like in 1930s detective. You're just like, what is the world these days? It's very interesting, Brendan's character and his character arc throughout the story. Like, where he starts, where he's just like isolated and kind of broken because they didn't break up too long ago before the movie starts. Because they said that at the end, they said that she was 3 months pregnant, which means that they were still dating just a few months ago, which is, to Justin's point, that is crazy. Like just what happens.
Yeah, the spiral. But
that does happen to people when they get involved in drugs and start doing some wild stuff, and
like a thing like from a sort of British perspective, like that's always fascinating about, the films that it's trading off, but also this film is like the reason it fit the detective sort of fiction fits so well over the high school thing is because you got this like stratification of like American high school, like in everyone's imagination, right?
Mm-hmm.
You got the geeks and you got the jocks and you got the nerds or whatever. Well, they're the same as the geeks. You can tell me what the other categories
What do
are.
they call them in London?
What? Like, I mean, it's just not what my question is. Like, is that a thing? Is it still a thing? Because here, it's just not. Like, it's like, of course, there's always different cliques and people have different friends. And like, there might be certain people who go, oh, that's the nerd crew. I wouldn't want to be with them or whatever. But it feels like, is that, I'm interested to know whether you think that's a real thing that films have like kind of articulated, or is it a thing created really by the movies and by TV shows to give that sense that there's this like really hard stratas of social society within a school?
I think that at one point that was probably a little bit more prevalent, but not to the extent in which it's kind of promoted. That it was like this, like, oh yeah, the geeks over here and the jocks over there. I think that there was a social class. There is a social class system in the high schools in America, which does exist or existed to some point. But I feel like things have changed so much and things blend far more than they ever have. And partly it's the internet. I think it's partly it's just the other part is like people just, I think at some point realized that you can kind of cross with some of the the things that you like and things like that, because there are far more jocks that are into the nerdy stuff, and what have you. So it's like, I think that it's changed, but I think that there was a point in the United States where that was far more prevalent. And I'd even go to say it's probably starting from like the 70s and 80s and started to phase out towards the early 2000s.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that whole like, culture's got, it just feels like it's so, even like back in the 90s, the like culture was a much simpler like construct, right? There was, just now there's just the sheer quantity of like, music and movies and TV shows has increased so far that like, you don't have these huge homogenous groups quite anymore in the same way.
Yeah, it's interesting because like to Justin's point, like I think about my sister-in-law and she just turned 21, and that generation's kind of like they, like Justin said, they kind of blend together with the different cliques that normally would be kind of segregated, especially like when we were growing up. But I also think it depends on like where you're growing up and where like what your environment, because the suburbs, I would say like when I was growing up, was very much like cliquey, like the different genres and subgroups, right? Whereas when I was teaching in like New York and New Jersey in those urban schools, there wasn't really cliques. It was like you're cool or you're not. Like that's it. Like there's like everyone else is pocketing the bigger group, but the cool kids, like those were all different walks of life. Like there would be one kid that was like really into like magic, and everyone was like, but that kid's mad smart, so that's why he was popular. And there's one kid that's like a great musician. Like everyone had their own talents as to what made them the cool kid at that school.
Magic has never been cool, Brendan.
You'd be surprised, man. This kid was killing it out in East Orange, New Jersey. I mean, he wasn't doing magic. It was the magic card. It was the card game. But anyways,
a funny thing is, I was in the Hamptons. I just graduated college. I was in the Hamptons, and I was at a club, and some of my friends, some of them being girls, at this place, and I'm pretty sure it was, oh my God, what was that magician at the time? I don't know, it was Chris Angel. I don't know, little short guy, but there was a guy at the club in the Hamptons doing magic, and he was using that as a tool to try to pick up women, which I'm just like, it's never gonna work, and it didn't work for him. But like, but
you never know.
I think it may have been Chris Angel. I think it may have been Chris Angel out there. But it was just very weird to see a guy literally, like, seriously in a club in a social setting doing magic, and he was doing great tricks. He's like doing really like high level stuff. I'm sitting there talking to him. I was like, oh, that's pretty cool, but it's kind of weird that you're doing magic right now, right here.
Justin, you got to fit in where you get in, or get in where you fit in. I'm flipping. It's 7 a.m. in the morning, guys. I didn't expect to be doing riddles. I'm not Rian Johnson writing these cryptic notes and shit.
Where's the duct tape, Brandon?
I mean, at the end, okay, so Laura called him a motherfucker. That's what she whispers to him, right? Before she leaves.
Yeah. I mean, I've read that. I wouldn't say I got that just from watching it, but yeah, that feels, yeah. I mean, did you hear her say that? Or you just like...
No, I just heard her say mother, and then the rest was mumbled, and then she walks away, and that's when he tells the brain, she called me a dirty word.
And the brain says, okay, don't tell me if you don't want to. He's like, he thinks he's lying to him, right?
Yeah. And I have a scene in Shuffle that's like that. That's like my ending. And it doesn't hit the same way, because you got, it's a cool shot too, because you got Matt O'Leary in the background, and you're getting that closure. I did love that she had the last burn though. She's like, okay, so you set me up to go down for this. You got me. But did you know that Emily was 3 months pregnant, which means you know who the daddy is? Peace. Because she ain't going back to the locker. She getting out of Dodge.
Oh yeah. Yeah. She's jumping on the train.
Going to New York City.
And she's got a rich lawyer, I feel like.
Oh, yeah.
It's going to be fine.
Yeah, wearing those hats that she was wearing, I'm pretty sure she's going to be okay.
Yeah, Brendan's over here putting duct tape on his torn jean jacket. Like, he's in trouble. If he doesn't get framed for some of this stuff, that's a blessing. He better lawyer up.
Oh, okay. We need to go back to that scene where Brendan's being chased. And then like he goes
and
around
he takes
the corner.
His shoes off. Yes.
Yeah. So that he could trip that dude, and the dude went head first into a pole. He's dead, right?
Oh yeah.
or he's at least a vegetable now, right? He's severely concussed. He's not coming back, right?
No, the brain tells us at the end he's like the knife guy. He woke up and he said, he was like, that was just Brad. That was just like a revenge thing. That was like nothing to do with everything else. That's like pretty much the last thing brain tells him. But I agree with your premise, Justin, which is he should be dead. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I always thought he was.
Oh,
dead.
he's running full pelt and gets tripped and collides with a metal bar.
But
he's dead. He's dead.
Concussion, dead, asleep, and night funeral. That's it. That's it. That's how it goes.
We're gonna rate this in a second, but I will say I do feel like it's weird that there's fewer consequences for the drugs and the death and the carnage that was happening in this town and at the school than there was in 21 Jump Street. You know what I mean? In that movie, they're literally hired because of drug overdoses and murders happening. And in the school, it's just Richard Roundtree like, hey, one snitch. You got to tell me what's going on. Otherwise, you're over. But Justin, break down our rating system, baby.
Stop calling me baby. So we rate movies bags of popcorn, small, medium, large, and the XL for the exceptional. If a film doesn't deserve any popcorn, we throw it into the dog shit pile, where we pile piles and piles of dog shit on top of it. So, Tom, we sat down and we watched Brick, a 2005 film by Rian Johnson, starring Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Nora. Oh, I can't even. I'm going to destroy her name. But let's talk about the important people: Richard Roundtree and Megan Good. Tom, what say you, sir?
I think I'm giving this a large popcorn. Okay. I feel like it stands up surprisingly well at this point. In a way, it's kind of like, maybe timeless isn't quite right. But I think the fact that it's like working within this genre means that it still plays roughly the same today as it did then. I love the language. I love the as we said earlier, the approach to tone and the risk taking with a first feature to do something this bold. And I love the fact that Rian Johnson loves genre. I really appreciate that about him. I think sometimes genre has become a bit of a dirty word amongst filmmakers. It's suggests mainstream or commercial, or you just trad ideas that have been repeated. What he does so well is takes a thing and kind of makes it his own. And so I think first feature under $500,000 and this bold take on tone. I still really loved it, and that's why it's getting a large popcorn for me.
All right, Brandon.
Yep, I'm also going to go with a large popcorn. I really enjoy this movie. I think it does drag in some parts, and there's some inconsistent performances, but overall, especially when this came out, there had been very little like this, especially in regards to its setting and its approach. And I think just for the uniqueness, it made me a fan of Rian Johnson for, since I saw this movie. I've seen every one of his movies. When his name came up, for The Last Jedi, given the work that he had done as a feature director, as well as, directing on Breaking Bad, I'm like, Star Wars is going to be in good hands. And of course, Kathleen Kennedy and them, they were like, yeah, we don't like what you did. But I'm glad that he found the Knives Out series and that this was kind of like a jump, a launch pad for that, like getting into the murder mystery genre. And also, like, I just love the writing. The script is really, really tight. It's on his website, I believe, but I've had it on my desktop for a long time. But yeah, it's just a really fascinating murder mystery that obviously influenced me in various ways, including Shuffle. Again, that's available on patreon.com/media popcorn. Remember Me Differently if you listen to that. But yeah, large popcorn still. Justin?
Just so you know, Brandon, that when you die, and it will definitely be before me, because I'm going to put a video on your headstone, like a video player on your headstone, and I'm just going to play Shuffle on loop. So that's what you're remembering. Anybody who walks by,
you won't be able to afford that technology. So your threat is mute.
I think I could make it happen. But I'd say I'm going to give this a small. I'm going to give it a small. For one, this also influenced Brandon's Shuffle. I cannot congratulate that it did so many terrible things for so many of us. It's
don't hold that against Rian.
No, I can. Like I said, about that genre, that was something that I really wasn't into. So it's also like anytime I watch those films, I'm like, oh, these guys again. But at the same time, I also like it is a pretty entertaining to watch, because it's also nuts. But it's also it's a grounded, nutty film, if that makes any sense. So it's a grounded, nutty film. You can quote me on that. Yeah, so I'm gonna give it a small.
That's definitely gonna be the quote on Rotten Tomatoes, Justin. Tom, thank you so much for joining us to break down Brick by Rian Johnson. It's been a long time coming doing this film. It's a favorite of mine, so I'm glad we got to do it despite Justin's reservations. Please tell the people how they can follow you and see your films and keep up with your projects.
Oh, well, thanks for having me. I had a ball, guys. You can follow me on social media at Tom George Film. I'm on Instagram. I'm sometimes on Twitter, but like most of us, sort of looking for the back door. So I might be there, but I'm definitely on Instagram. And check out See How They Run, which is on Disney Plus at the moment.
Nice. And then Justin, how can people follow you as well as support the show financially if they choose to do so?
Guys, you can follow me at J Brown Did It on the socials. And if you love this show and you want more of this show, take yourself over to patreon.com/medium popcorn. We have $2, $5, $10, and $15 packages. Our entire backlog goes on to Patreon. We have bonus episodes. We have mini episodes as well, mini shows rather. And then on top of that, you can also find Shuffle, the Shuffle reading, on Patreon, so you can smite Brandon every day of your life. Brandon?
Yep, and after you listen to Shuffle, you can follow me at American Collins on all social media platforms. You can follow the show at Medium P Podcast as well on all those platforms. And then be sure to subscribe at youtube.com/media popcorn so you get alert about all future reviews, videos, and celebrity interviews on that page. Thank you again, Tom, so much for joining us. It's been a blast.
Cheers, guys.
And congratulations on the film. I'm looking forward to seeing what you do next. And I'd love to have you back on whenever you got something to promote.
Absolutely. And Tom, again, thank you very much. And at any point, if you decide, like, I just need one person to be in every single one of my films, I'm available. I'm available. Don't do Brandon, because Brandon, if you watch Shuffle, no, I'll leave him alone.
Try to talk
Thanks,
me out of
guys.
work.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Tom. We really appreciate it. Man.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.